Hi, I'm Nicholas from Ratings.com. Today we'll be doing a review of the 65-inch Hisense U8K. This is a popular 4K TV that replaces the Hisense U8H from 2022, and it's ahead of the U6K and the U7K in their 2023 lineup. However, it's below their new flagship UX model, which is only available in an 85-inch size, while this one is available from 55 to 100 inches. That said, the 75-inch model of the U8K has a different panel with worse contrast and wider viewing angles than the 65-inch model we tested, so that TV performs differently. It's important to keep in mind that there are similar models available outside of North America, but the results aren't valid for those, so this review is really for the U8K in the US and the U88KM in Canada. The first thing we'll do is look at the design. It has a rather simple yet premium design with a plastic body and some metal around the edges. It feels well built and there aren't any obvious issues. It wobbles a bit, but that's only really an issue if you're going up to it and pushing it back and forth. Otherwise, the stand holds the screen well. Speaking of the stand, you can either put the feet in a wide or narrow position depending on the size of the table. They raise the screen high enough so you can place a soundbar in front without blocking it. There are also clips on the feet for basic cable management to help keep your cables tidy. While we're here, let's look at those inputs. Unlike other modern 4K TVs, this one has a composite input, so you can use an adapter to connect old devices like older gaming consoles or DVD players if you want to get a bit nostalgic every so often. But unfortunately, Hisense doesn't include the adapter in the box. Also, the TV's tuner supports ATSC 3.0, so you can watch over-the-air channels in 4K. It even supports Wi-Fi 6E for faster wireless speeds. Besides that, the power port is on the back left side, while all the other ports are on the right side. It has inputs you'd expect to find on most modern TVs, with HDMI ports 3 and 4 supporting HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, which is useful for connecting high-end PCs or gaming consoles. However, because one of those is also the eARC port, you lose one of those high-end bandwidth slots when you connect a soundbar or receiver that doesn't support HDMI 2.1 pass-through. On the plus side, it supports both DTS and Dolby audio formats, so you can hear the content as it was intended. While we're on the topic of sound, let's look at the speakers. They're pretty decent, but they're nothing more special than on other TVs. Sure, dialogue sounds very clear and the TV gets loud, but there are still some compression artifacts and it doesn't produce much bass. You'll need a proper sound system for the best experience, like any TV. Now that we know what's on the outside, let's look at what's inside the TV. Like past Hisense models, it comes with Google TV. It's easy to use and it has a ton of apps you can download. It has a small and functional remote with quick access buttons for popular streaming services. It also has a button to open Google Assistant, or you can use the mic built into the TV for hands-free voice control. If you're concerned about privacy, there's also a switch to turn off the TV mic. Although it's a Google TV, it also supports Apple AirPlay, so you can cast content directly from your iPhone. Okay, now that we've discussed the basic stuff, let's move on to the fun stuff, the picture quality. It has a VA panel with an extremely high contrast ratio with its local dimming feature on, and it competes with some of the best LED TVs for this. Blacks are deep and inky next to bright highlights, so it's excellent for watching content in dark rooms. Speaking of its local dimming feature, it uses mini LED backlighting, and the 65-inch model has just over 1,000 dimming zones. This results in minimal blooming, but it isn't perfect, as you'll still see some blooming around bright objects in dark scenes. You'd have to get an OLED if you don't want any blooming though. Thanks to this high contrast ratio, the TV also displays bright highlights against those deep blacks. The HDR peak brightness is amazing, so those highlights pop, making content look vivid. It follows the PQ EOTF curve well enough, but some content is over-brightened. Even at that, it's hard to notice. The peak brightness remains very high even in SDR. Combined with its incredible reflection handling, you won't have many issues with it even in the brightest of rooms. Unlike other TVs like the Sony X95L, it doesn't have any rainbow smear with bright lights either. On top of its excellent picture quality in dark and bright rooms, it also makes content look lifelike and realistic. This is because it has excellent accuracy in SDR even before calibration, so you won't have to worry unless you can notice the smallest inaccuracies. It also displays a wide range of colors in HDR, and while most colors are bright and vivid, not all colors are as bright as pure white. While the image is accurate when viewing from right in front of the TV, it's inconsistent when viewing from the sides. This is because it has a narrow viewing angle that makes the image look washed out from the sides, so it isn't a good choice for a wide seating area. Of course, you can't take advantage of this TV's picture quality without a good processor. There are both good and bad things about its processing. We'll start with the good. It's good at smoothing out content from low quality sources, like streaming apps that use compression, such as Netflix or Disney+. If you enable the smooth gradient setting, there isn't any macro blocking, and it keeps details well. It's also good at upscaling lower resolution content, like from DVDs or cable boxes, but it isn't as good as other high-end TVs, like the Sony X90L, for example. There's just a bit of blurring, and while it's hard to notice for most people, it just isn't the best upscaling out there. Another downside is some color banding, like in grays, blues, and reds. This is noticeable in HDR content with shades of similar colors, like a sunset, but not all colors have banding either. If you don't need the TV only for watching your favorite shows and movies, and you want something for gaming, then we should probably talk about its gaming performance. To start, you get the same excellent picture quality in the game's picture mode as outside of it. It still has those deep blacks and bright highlights even when playing the latest games in HDR. It has a neat game bar feature that lets you easily switch settings while gaming, including the aspect ratio, which is similar to what some gaming monitors offer. The TV supports a max refresh rate of 144Hz on HDMI 3 or 4, but you can't get a 4K resolution at that refresh rate with an NVIDIA graphics card. This means you can only get 4K at 144Hz with an AMD graphics card that supports HDMI 2.1 bandwidth. It also supports 1080p at an even higher 240Hz refresh rate, but you need to disable VRR for that to work, which is disappointing for PC gaming. We did experience a small bug during testing where the TV would go into its diagnostic mode when changing settings, like turning VRR on or off, and we could only fix it by restarting the TV. While this shouldn't be an issue for most people, it can be annoying if you're constantly changing sources or playing around with settings like we do during testing. Besides PC gaming, it also works well with gaming consoles like the PS5 and Xbox Series X. As long as you have the consoles connected to one of the HDMI 2.1 ports, there aren't any compatibility issues. It's also one of the few TVs on the market that supports 4K at 120Hz with Dolby Vision on the Xbox. In terms of its actual gaming performance, this isn't so straightforward. While it has a good response time with fixed refresh rates, there are some issues when you enable VRR. The response time gets more aggressive at refresh rates higher than 100Hz, leading to more overshoot and inverse ghosting behind fast-moving objects. This is problematic when you have VRR enabled with the refresh rate hovering around 100Hz because you could see the difference in motion handling when it's above and below the 100Hz mark. However, as I just mentioned, it isn't so much of a concern with fixed signals, like if you're gaming from a console. It isn't as bad to use as its main competitor, the TCL QM8, which has even more issues with its VRR enabled. Besides the motion handling, the TV has incredibly low input lag for a responsive feel while gaming. This is amongst some of the best TVs, and it is even as low as some gaming monitors. If you're using a 1080p 240Hz signal, you need to disable VRR to get low input lag, but it doesn't support a true 1080p 240Hz signal with VRR on anyways. Now that we know how the TV performs, this brings us to the main question. Should you buy it? In short, if you're looking for the best value TV, you should buy it. It performs as well, if not better, than some more expensive options. The fantastic contrast ratio, great local dimming feature, and high peak brightness are all some of the best on the market. It has better color accuracy and upscaling than its main competitor, the TCL QM8, and you could usually find it for cheaper as well. Sure, the TCL has better motion handling with fixed refresh rates, but it also has bugs that cause issues with its motion handling with VRR enabled, so neither of those TVs are a clear winner for that. Of course, the Hisense isn't a perfect TV, and it has some downsides. Its processing isn't as good as some higher-end TVs like the Sony X93L, so if you stream a lot of movies and care about that, then the Sony is the better choice. It's even better at upscaling and content smoothing, and it also has wider viewing angles. While the Sony TV is better for watching movies, the Hisense is still better for gaming as it has lower input lag and supports higher refresh rates. So between these two TVs, you have to decide on spending more for the absolute best LED TV in terms of picture quality, or save money with something that's great in a lot of things, but not the absolute best with anything. Think of the Hisense as a jack-of-all-trades TV. That's all for the Hisense U8K. If you want to learn more, check out our written review on the website. The link is in the description below. As always, stay tuned to this channel for more TV reviews. Ciao!